Hi, and welcome back to Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Euler. I'm your host, Brad Wilder. Today we're back with part 2. Ute Heggen is standing by along with John Euler. We've been asking some very interesting questions with some very interesting answers. I think we got from 1 to 5, and we're going to move through all the way to number 20 today. So let's bring in both John and Ute back into the program. They've got to do a quick recap on exactly what went down with questions 1 through 5, and then we'll move into the rest. And some of these answers, well, I'm sure they're going to leave your head spinning, shaking, and possibly just shaking it back and forth like me. John?
Brad, thank you as always. Ute Heggen, thank you for being with us. We are reviewing the data, we could say the preliminary data, because you're in the process of still collecting additional data, and you are welcoming additional women. You call yourselves trans widows. I call you women that were betrayed by deviant, porn-saturated men that started to wear women's underwear and drag and became amazingly self-entitled and then had a deep malevolence toward women. Other than that, we can call you a trans widow. And so you felt compelled and are doing an excellent job at collecting data that has been ignored, that no one has done before, and you are the perfect person to do it because you have that lived experience. And so you have crafted a 20-question questionnaire. You're doing what amounts to field research with both qualitative and quantitative components of this research that you're doing. You got the attention in a negative way of male sexologists. Why? Because this threatens the narrative that these men are sensitive narrative and in need of our support. They do not need our support. They need boundaries, and they need to be kept out of the private spaces of women and children, and they are the ones that do not deserve sympathy. It's the wives, it's the families that are having to live with the fallout of these selfish individuals, these selfish men. And so we're here to unmask that, because that is a big part of, these deviant men that are a big part of pushing the trans deception narrative and pushing their way into private spaces of women and children. So we're going through, I recommend people go back and listen to part 1, but we're going to review very quickly the first 4 questions, which we dealt with in fair detail, and then we'll pick up at number 5. So Ute, what we'll do is we'll just go through the first 4 questions fairly quickly, and then we'll pick up where we left on in number 5.
Right. So was his cross-dressing a revelation or your discovery? Discovery 18 of us, revelation 20, and 7 were unknown, because I took that data from interviews and that wasn't really specifically covered. Now, the discovery part of it is just kind of creepy, because it often means that a therapist was colluding also. And then do you want to put up number 2?
Let's do that. And before we do, let the viewers know if they are also a trans widow, how can they participate in this study? The questionnaire is up even as we speak.
Yes. I have a WordPress blog, which is called Ute Heggen, grasswidow.wordpress.com. And that was back when I was, doing the book In the Curated Woods, True Tales of a Grass Widow. I was actually too nervous to put the word trans widow into the title of my book, because I was afraid my book would get banned. So I used the old, Middle Ages term for a woman who lives honorably away from her husband, which was grass widow. 1528 was the first reference to that. So we did number 1, and then do you want to, so I said Ute Heggen, grasswidow.wordpress.com, and then my YouTube channel is Trans Widow Ute Heggen, all just 4 separate words, and I have profiles of us, I have trans widow testimonies, I have a wellness movement playlist, I have nature things from my garden, because all of that is for healing. And I'm hoping to get as many as 200, responses.
There we go. So we encourage any trans widow, any woman that's been betrayed by these deviant guys, to participate in your ongoing survey. Here are the questions and respondents thus far.
2, did he then tell you it's under control and not that frequent, and then it escalated out of control? Yes, for 23 of us, almost half. Again, some of it was unknown because of my taking the data from interviews. I felt that if there were even 4 yeses, that I should on any of my questions from an interview that I saw, that I should put it into my data, because it's important, all of these points. I'm ready for 3 if you want.
There you go. Number 3.
Yeah. Did he select a therapist? Did that therapist or he claim that the marriage is now a lesbian relationship? Yes, for 11 of us. Now, one of the reasons that that's a lower number is quite a few women just said, we're done. I'm moving out, or you're moving out, or something like that. So they didn't go to a therapist and wait to be told that.
Right. And then bring up number 4.
So did he put money in a secret account or other venue and spend it on wardrobe, makeup, electrolysis, and et cetera? Did he incur credit card debt for his spending? Yes, for 15. And in a couple of them, it was pretty devastating debt. One actually had a facelift without telling his wife. I shouldn't go into these individual things, because the individual stories are like a million tangents, but it's pretty remarkable. They're profiled. I have profiles on my channel.
It's unbelievable,
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to jump into, we're going to continue to. So number 5 on the questionnaire.
Yeah. Did he wear your clothing or makeup? Yes, 18. And again, some women didn't know.
And this is out of 45 respondents thus far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so nearly half.
Right.
Half.
Yes. Yes. And in my case, actually, he did this thing of giving me a so-called present after he came home from a business trip, but it would be this piece of jewelry that didn't have a tag. It wasn't in a box. And then, or a sweater that was a little bit big, no tag. And he said, I saw this at a flea market, and I thought of you. And I remember I didn't know any about what he was doing, but I said to him, just bring something for the kids. Your taste and my taste are different. So just don't do that. Now I know that he was buying things and wearing it himself, and then pretending it was a gift for me.
This is so violent.
Go on, don't even react. Just go to number 6.
Yeah. Okay.
Suggest or coerce or cajole you into so-called sex role play, whereby you are to use a strap-on or other sex toy and play a male part in bed? Yes, 13. So I felt that it was very important to put the 3 different ways: suggest, coerce, or cajole, because you're told, well, just try it. You will probably like it. It's really sexy, da-da-da. And they've been watching this really disgusting pornography. And then later on, I'll explain how there are a couple of cases where choking got involved. And later on, I discuss about forcible sexual assault. So this is just coercion, right? This is just coercion.
This is grooming. It's grooming, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So let's just
pushing boundaries out. It's pushing boundaries out.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And okay. Yes. Okay. Let's go on to number 7, because this is related to number 6.
Yeah, and it's so important, Ute, as we're talking about this, as you're sharing this for those of us that haven't lived through this, to understand the degree of trauma. This is just chipping away at the soul of a spouse.
Well, and this is
the unsuspecting spouse.
You've talked about the show 50 Shades of Grey and how that's kind of like grooming. So this is the same thing. This is this kink, BDSM being acceptable. Don't kink shame, all this kind of nonsense. So did a therapist suggest any of the above, as in number 6? And actually, I wrote, I'm combining the answers of these 2 in the data. I'm not, because some of us, it was yes on both. So I'm not combining these 2 in the data. I need to edit that. But it's important to know if a mental health professional was coercing you, harassing you, suggesting whatever, grooming you, And that yes is 5. Now,
influencing, right?
And a lot of the women just refused, once they were told they're a lesbian and they know they're not and all this, then they just refused. So they didn't have a therapist saying if they had probably gone to a couple more appointments, it probably would have happened. It did happen to me. Ruth the charlatan told me that's in our previous, one of our previous interviews. I did all the, choices that she offered me and in my husband's behalf. And so I would love, my fantasy is that a group of us, trans widows who had therapists saying that to us, that we get in a class action lawsuit for sexual harassment and we sue the American Psychological Association. But that's my pipe dream.
Yeah, so much for therapist neutrality. Shall we go on to number 8?
Yes. Did he defame or vilify you in affidavits submitted to court in the divorce and custody process, or defame, vilify you on social media? Yes, 19 of us, one or the other. And, Christine Benvenuto's, who's written a book, Sex Change, her ex-husband, who is a professor, Joy Ladin, he calls himself. I guess his name was Jay. He just changed one letter, Joy. And this is all public, so I can talk about this. He defamed her so much. She was working as a freelance writer and being, part-time working at this and part-time taking care of their 3 children. And at all time taking care of their 3 children, right? Yeah. And the younger child was very young. And he tried to prevent her from getting work. He defamed her professionally. This is someone who has, is a tenured professor at one of those schools in Massachusetts. Let's just go next. Don't even respond because.
Unbelievable. It certainly.
Okay. Did he claim to any therapist or a group of friends that you abused him verbally or physically? Now, I actually probably should edit this because they all say that we verbally abuse them. Okay. They call just being in biological reality and using their correct pronouns and saying they're the father as verbal abuse. But so this is really 5 of us were accused of physically attacking him. And in fact, the most recent trans widow whom I'm naming Ondine, her husband filed a citizen's arrest report to the police. And she had the police knocking on her door with a claim that he, being a foot taller than her, had been attacked by her physically. And then when that proved to be not a valid claim, she could not get the police to prosecute him for making a false claim to police. So let's just move on because we can go on and on.
Unbelievable. That's it. Yeah.
10, did he attack you physically? Please indicate whether it was choking, shoving, punching, etc., and if there were any bruises, scars, and evidence, also if the police were called. Okay, so there were 10 yeses, 10 out of 45 women, okay, about a fourth, were physically assaulted. In the 2 cases where it was choking, these 2 women called the police, and that helped them in their custody case. Both of them had children. In all the other physical assaults, law enforcement was not notified. Move on to the next question because we can't,
We need to tell women if any physical stuff is going on, they need to separate ASAP from.
Right, I know, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Very dangerous. Oh, and in fact, the 10th one was my Ondine, and he used a taser next to her face. And he had called the police on her and accused her of verbal abuse and accused her of, false assault. And then, it seems to me that could be very dangerous. You could get a heart attack from having this, close to your body and stuff like, this is really alarming. Okay. 11, did he force unwanted sex with you? Did that happen more than once? Were the police called? Were any charges filed? Okay, so there were 17 sexual assaults. This is This is not the coercion and cajoling to try out sex role play. Typically, what the women are describing is that they have been coerced, cajoled, suggested, whatever, influenced to do this sex role play. They have this fake penis strapped to them. One of them, it hurt her C-section scar. Like, this is not safe for women to use these implements. And then he gets super aroused. And she's like, done. She's like, okay, I tried this, we're done. And then he rapes her. So there were 3 rapes, and none of these have been reported to law enforcement. And I do believe these women. I just do believe.
And as you're describing this, so the guy wants his wife to put on a strap-on penis.
Yes.
And anally penetrate.
I don't know. I mean,
how else would it have? So
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
so, but we're just right. This elephant in the middle of the room. But the reality is this: some guys into homosexual sex at that point.
Well, I think there's a lot with this that.
I tell you what, the one exam that a man always avoids is a proctology exam.
Yes.
So, right, yeah. I can speak that. I do not find that arousing.
No.
Okay. Oh gosh.
Yeah. No, but I think that with this whole trans thing, that there is this percent or segment of it which is probably self-hate because actually they are same-sex attracted. So I kind of wonder sometimes if my ex-husband Nettie falls into that, because I suspect but don't have any proof that he had homosexual affairs. But this is all just
Let me just jump in for a second with a great question. I think John had mentioned it on a previous episode that the ultimate goal of somebody who was trans was to actually have a woman with the surgery perform sex with them. Isn't that the goal, John? Wasn't that part of the goal? Wasn't that the crown prize?
Well, we're left scratching our head at this point.
I think they don't know what they want. I think they're very, very messed up. I think they're very psychiatrically ill. And I think that with some of them they've had, a lot of the women, I choose not to really ask them too much about their ex-husband because that gets into this whole other thing. But a lot of times they had terrible relationships with her father. They had talked about sexual abuse as a child, or I know that my ex-husband was physically abused by his father, whipped with a belt. And the thing is, this rape stuff, that also comes from the pornography. Because see, these guys have the idea that women's experience of sex is one of degradation. That's this mindset that they have. And that I can tell you, as a woman who has, really had good times after my marriage was over, with physical intimacy. No, we don't. We don't want that.
No, that's a very male deviant kind of thing.
Right. And so they are asking their wives to sort of be the rapist, and then they become the rapist because they still have their parts, and then they want to do it, see? And so, this is probably the most shocking statistic. And one was and the young women, oh my goodness, there were two young women in their 20s who are only like 27 now, okay? This was a guy maybe around their age, not too much older than 30, who has been watching a lot of this really, really horrific pornography. And there was one woman in Scandinavia who was repeatedly raped. I think the guy was actually 7 or 8 years older than her. She was repeatedly raped, and also pimped out to his cross-dressing friends. She got herself out of it. But just think about this. This is in a Scandinavian country where women are supposed to have equal rights. And she was so afraid of him, because he also had some mob ties. She was so afraid of him that she never reported these crimes. He also physically assaulted her. Like, he choked her and stuff. She's one of the choking stats. Okay. So we probably should actually move on, because if we stop on any one of these, we can just go on and on.
That's right.
But
and there's different populations within this population as well.
Yes.
So
yeah. Did you live below the poverty line or require governmental or family financial assistance at any time after the end of the relationship? Were you unable to leave because of money? Yes to this by 17 of us. I believe that there would be quite a few more if in the interviews that I went through, if they had covered that topic. But the thing is, as Vaishnavi Sundar, the documentarian who is making a film about us, Behind the Looking Glass, she said that once we start talking, she interviewed many more than 18 of us, but only 18 of us agreed to be in it with our voice and so on. She's had to put animation on some of us because they don't want their face on. So just imagine. So, yeah. So, I think I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. The impact, though, that this has financially.
Oh, she said, actually, this is what Vaishnavi said. She said that once you get us talking, she just decided she's not going to try to ask questions and have us just answer these questions and stuff for her film, which has 2 trailers up now on Lime Soda Films YouTube channel. And I'm in both of them, saying, leave. So she said that once we start talking, and you kind of know this from me too, like we kind of get all over the place. It's the PTSD, it's the fear, it's the having been censored and silenced for so long. But so just let's go on through because we have to try to.
Yeah, but that was extremely well put, right? The trauma that this creates is just multi-layered.
And I have to tell you that you have helped me because you pointed that out to me, that's kind of classic trauma thinking, and that helps me because I know that I'm distracted and I feel sometimes I feel kind of like, oh dear, but thank you.
There's just a lot to say.
Yeah. So, did any members of the clergy, such as priests, rabbis, and ministers, suggest that you give in to his request to keep your family marriage together? 3 of us, yes. Most were no, because they're just not in a religious context. But I think it's significant that any members of the clergy would be trying to get you to accommodate. And of course, they don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
And that's also why they don't want to touch a lot of this, because sexual abuse and domestic violence, very similar dynamics going on within the home. And so you have so many women suffering in silence. Not that guys don't with domestic violence, but generally speaking.
That's a little different here in Canada. I think that priests actually and clergy do know, and I think that there's been a little bit of indoctrination there for them here in our country, you guys.
Yeah. Well, one of the women who was repeatedly raped was in Canada.
Okay. In the interest of time, we'll keep going. But again, Ute, if a trans widow wants to participate, again, it's uteheggen.grasswidow.
Ute Heggen, let me say it.
Yeah.
Ute Heggen, grasswidow.wordpress.com. The next time that I send you any documentation, I'll be sure to put that on there.
I've actually had it on the screen the whole episode,
oh, good.
guys,
okay.
So people are going to be able to get that.
Okay,
no
good.
Yep.
Great,
there
thanks.
we go.
Yes. Did anyone, therapist, friend, husband, or family, suggest you are now obligated to share Mother's Day? Yes, there were 2 where it was this overt thing. I know.
I can't handle this.
Yeah. Oh, but there's more.
Okay, I'm in the field and I can't handle this.
Okay. Yeah. There was one who was in therapy out on the West Coast, on the navy blue West Coast. Okay. And she was in therapy for herself because she has PTSD. She stayed for 10 years. Okay. Pretending to be a lesbian because she was afraid and everything. And they had a young child. And then the kid is mad when she says, actually, we're not lesbians. That's your dad. So anyway. So she's in therapy, trying to get over, having panic attacks and stuff like that. And the husband had been violent also. I should probably add her to the violent part. Oh gosh, I am starting to get distracted. Let's see. Mother's Day, right. So she was in therapy for herself to recover from her PTSD. And it's getting to be Mother's Day. It's like, first week of May. And she's just unburdening herself about that Mother's Day, like it turns out that weekend, the daughter is going to be over there with this guy. And who is like 6'2" and, dresses like Rachel Levine. Okay. So the therapist says to her, you're going to have to get over that. And she was required in the therapy to say she and call this person my ex-wife and stuff. And that's the guy who he sued for divorce on the grounds when she got involved with a nice man that she is now married to. He sued her for divorce. He served papers on her that it was on the grounds of infidelity.
Oh, she was unfaithful.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, let's go to the next one.
In your own individual therapy or in the process of interviewing a therapist for yourself, did any mental health professionals tell you that he's to be referred to as female with female pronouns in therapy that's supposedly centered around your recovery? So when I interviewed a potential therapist for myself, I was told that this is standard practice. Of course, you're going to have to do that. So I count myself among that. And the mental health field is very, very captured. And so the bad thing about this is that, okay, so some of these women have been raped. I mean, the one in Canada actually is in therapy, and she uses they, them about her ex. Okay. Like, that's ridiculous because he raped her repeatedly. Okay. And so this is this thing about, her penis. Oh, I'm supposed to say her penis. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So let's just go on to the next one, plow through.
It's just
astonishing. Did you lose a set of friends after he came out or after the relationship ended? 18 of us, yes. Yeah.
I can only imagine, right? Your entire world is turned upside down.
And there are people who say, well, you could have tried to stay together. Why didn't you try to stay together for the children?
Yeah, for the kids. That's right. How's that going to work?
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to start talking about strap-ons and
that's right.
scars. Right. And, did he start self-identifying as a mother of the children he fathered or was a stepfather of? I said, or was the stepfather of, because there was one case where there was a stepfather and the father had gone or died or something, and the stepfather started doing this, and then he said that he was the mother. So so I know that my ex-husband was written in stone in our divorce, which was signed in 1998, that he is not to do that, because he had already started doing that during the divorce, submitting papers to the school, listing me down below as if I was the nanny. There were people who said, oh, but why are they calling you mom? You're the nanny. And I was like, wow, they think I'm 25. How about that? So this is very common, though. If you go to a website called advocacy.com, which is, I think, related to the gay newspaper, The Advocate, there are at least 11 men like Rachel Levine who have pictures of themselves looking just like Rachel Levine and exclaiming how wonderful it is to get the Mother's Day card on Mother's Day. I'm so happy my children are so wonderful, blah, blah. And no mention on any of them about the actual mother. Just move on. 18. Did he suggest or insist that the children call him mama something or some other version of mom? Yes is 9 of us. There are probably some who don't know. And then, of course, there are some who were not mothers. So my ex-husband, this is the typical thing. As a matter of fact, Undine, the latest trans widow I got data from, he had their child call the mother, Undine, by her first name instead of mom, and she overheard the child referring to her father, to her father. I'm not saying the sex of the child, as mom, my mom. Okay. And my children refused to do that, but they were aware that, for example, my ex-husband Nettie got involved with, after finding out that men are not interested in him, he got involved with a woman who identifies herself as a lesbian, and she had artificial insemination, not from anything related to him. And they have a child who is a boy who is 19 now. And back when I was talking to my son, in 2020, my son said that stepbrother of his thinks that my ex-husband is my son's, his and his brother's mother. And I don't know, my son said to me that he was going to tell Nettie, if you don't tell him, I will. But I wouldn't be surprised if he just retracted that, because Nettie is very, very manipulative, and he's a very wealthy tech executive. And, my children are afraid of being rejected. And I have no idea what extent he would go to estrange them. I think that he would go on social media and things like that, but that's just conjecture.
Okay, two more of the questions, and again, somebody can go, trans widow can go online and participate. You're collecting data actively on these questions.
Yes. Did a therapist or husband or any friends or relatives tell you that your rejection of and ending the relationship caused him to decide to live as a female full-time? 5 of us, yes. And with me, it was the female sexologist who did the one appointment diagnosis 2 years before I found out that he was doing this again. And she wrote in the sworn affidavit in like 1996, in the middle of my divorce. She said that she knew, after not ever talking to me or meeting me, that my rejection of Nettie and my refusal to do some kind of the alternative door ABC, whatever, open marriage, sex role play, that I mean, she didn't list all those things, but she said that my rejection of him and my refusal to have him remain in the family home, and this is the phrase she used, forced him to decide to live full-time as a woman. And he also wrote the same sworn affidavit and submitted it to the court. Yep, go ahead.
Let's go to the next. I can't even.
Did he co-opt your experience of childbirth using the details of your labor to convince new friends of his female status and role as mother? Okay, so many of us don't know, but 3 of us do. And I happen to know, because where we lived in Brooklyn is like a series of small towns. I happen to know from 2 different people who made the assumption that I was the nanny, okay? That it was sort of like when I said, no, I'm their mother. That's why they call me mom. Then, I kind of got it later privately from a couple of women who had been convinced they need new eyeglasses. They had been convinced that Nettie is a woman. And so they each had said to me, yeah, but he talked about the 12-hour labor, I don't understand. And I was like, oh, well, that was my 12-hour labor. And then the miraculous 5-hour labor the second time. Wow. And then one actually, this was trans widow number 44, I think. She said that he came out as trans during her second pregnancy. She's a little older than me, so this was quite a while ago, like late 80s and early 90s. No, early 90s. And so he came out as trans during her second pregnancy. And she was very isolated because he had taken a new job and they had moved. And she went into early labor, didn't have anybody to be with her except him. And he acted very strangely during her labor and was co-opting her experience. And he claims to be the mother. Okay.
Otherwise known as malignant narcissism.
Yeah. Pretty, yeah. So I just want to say, if I have a little bit more time, that I really thought about these questions. One question that I didn't ask, but I got 4 yeses on this, is that in terms of the children, the trans orphans. And this is in a cohort of less than 45, because not all of us are mothers, but 4 of the children experienced suicidal ideation, including my older son. His was the mildest. We got him into therapy, but Nettie refused to participate in it and refused to pay for it. There were 2 others of those 4, then 2 of the children did such serious suicide attempts that they had to be hospitalized. And then the last of the 4 engaged in pretty serious self-harm, and had expressed suicidal ideation, but she did not attempt suicide such that she had to be hospitalized. Now, none of these fathers is willing to take responsibility for this ramification, and none of the 4 musketeers of sex are willing to even know about this. That's my analysis.
Uta, thank you. I encourage all the grass widows to go to your site, to take that survey, to contribute, because the more data you have, the more compelling it is, and hopefully we can help shift the narrative away from these sexually deviant men that have garnered sympathy, and place it where it should be, which are those that have suffered the fallout of this grand scheme and this abject narcissism.
Yes. Thank you both.
Yeah.
You've also given us an indication as to what to look for. You've given women an indication of what to look for, how to address it, and how to move forward from it. So a really compelling hour of great talk. Thank you both for being here. This is Unmasking the Trans Movement. Remember, you can find us on Rumble, BitChute, YouTube. We're everywhere you need us to be. You can see us online at our website too. Everything is there, unmaskingthetransmovement.com. We have webinars. We also have support groups up and running to help and get everybody educated enough to really have the communication going forward, to be able to not only throw the right words back in a drag queen story hour out front, or whether it's with your own children, or whether it's with your own spouse. I'm Brad Wilder. This is Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Euler. We'll see you next time. Remember, it's not our kids' fight, it's our fight.